We hear a lot about diversity in the workplace.
At Ericsson, diversity is extremely high up on our agenda.
We've been reporting our diversity numbers for 10 years.
Diversity is good business.
It's gender, religion, race, color, and in fact, we've recently reached out into the Amish community.
It's great that we're talking about diversity in the workplace, but there's one group that we just don't hear about as often: people with disabilities.
I'm really over the well-intentioned person that does stuff that's totally fucked up.
Talking about diversity openly and honestly is important because it creates accountability. But for people living with a disability, that talk can fall short. Maysoon Zayid is a comedian and actress. She also has cerebral palsy.
I love telling people I have brain damage because it's so uncomfortable for people. They're
Why?
like, no, you don't. No, you're okay. And I'm like, no, seriously. The part of my brain that controls coordination is damaged.
Maysoon is frustrated by the expectation that her disability totally disqualifies her from being a productive human being.
I always get people being like, well, you could never be a heart surgeon. And I'm like, actually, depending on technology, I probably could be. But why are you comparing me to a heart surgeon and not a TV host? When you go to employers, they immediately say things like, she can't handle the rigors. It's a really long day. How's she going to be able to handle it? And they don't ask me if I can.
It's almost as if it's unfathomable to people that someone with a disability could have a normal, mundane job. So I asked some people with normal, mundane jobs why that is. Do you think that employers are doing enough work to incorporate different kinds of diversity of candidates into their place of employment?
Yes, I do.
It's funny you should ask me that. I'm actually a technical recruiter.
Oh, interesting.
Candidates are more diverse than they were, say, 10 or 15 years ago even.
The company that I work for seems to be pretty diverse.
And what about people living with a disability? How many are in your place of employment?
I don't think we have anybody actually at my office.
And so are there any people living with a disability who work at your place of employment?
No.
No?
No.
But like I know a couple of people who are disabled, but they will withhold that when they're looking for a job.
Because why do you think that they do that?
Because they feel like the employers aren't going to hire them.
I feel like it's something that they are scared because sometimes they feel like they won't get the job.
And do you think that employers tend to see it as a cost rather than a benefit?
Definitely.
Right.
Yes.
You can always cut a cost somewhere to add a cost, and to have equal values in the workplace is super important. I think it should be a part of every budget.
They assume too much about the capacity of a disabled person to effectively do the work. So they just jump to conclusions. But they're in a position where they have to also make snap decisions very quickly to meet a demand. It's a very tied up system. People with disabilities make up 19% of the US population, and a majority of them, 70%, were unemployed in 2014. That's despite the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is supposed to prevent employment discrimination for people with physical or developmental disabilities. So companies should just hire more people with disabilities, right? It's actually easier said than done. Understandably, people aren't forced to disclose their disabilities. I called PwC, a huge professional services institution, to find out how many employees with disabilities work there. They've had a lot of success hiring candidates with disabilities, but they've noticed that it can be difficult to quantify that success. Why do you think it's just harder to sort of get that information?
I think you've got to establish a certain level of trust. It's at that point in time that I think you feel more comfortable to actually raise your hand and ask for an accommodation perhaps, or to disclose. It's
essentially an issue of trust. There's such a stigma around disabilities that people are reluctant to even disclose that they have one. The first step to ending that stigma is to talk about the fact that people with disabilities are excellent employees.
I think they need to meet the talent, the people who are qualified, and that all the fear that you have of being sued or us costing too much money or just not being able to do it and having everyone around us pick up the slack is just that, fear. It's not the reality.
Maysoon is right. Overall, concerns about hiring workers with disabilities average 42% higher than the challenges employers actually experience working with them. Not tapping into this potential isn't just bad for society, it's bad for business. It's time to see people with disabilities for what they are: talent.